You've heard the number, right? 5150. It's a rock album, a slang term. It's just a piece of our culture. But what you might not know is that behind that number, there's a serious legal code, a really complex history, and a wild story about how the language of mental health gets completely transformed in the mainstream. So today, we're deconstructing 5150. So where have you heard it? Was it that legendary Van Halen album? Maybe on a TV show, or just, thrown around as slang for someone acting wild or out of control? The point is, once you start looking for it, you see it everywhere. So what is 5150 really? Where did the specific number even come from? And how in the world did it leap from dense, boring legal jargon into a pop culture catchphrase? All right, let's break it all down. To really get to the bottom of it, we have to go back, way back to the source. And the source isn't some recording studio or a Hollywood writer's room. It's the California State Legislature. Yep, this number has a very specific and a very important story rooted in law. It all starts with something called the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act, or the LPS Act for short. This was a landmark piece of legislation signed back in 1967 in California, and it was designed to totally reform the mental health system. It had to pull off this incredibly delicate balancing act. How do you protect an individual's civil rights while also creating a system for emergency intervention during a severe crisis? And buried within that act is the section that started this whole thing, Section 1550. This is the official legal definition. It's a specific part of the California Code that lets authorized personnel, like police officers or clinicians, place someone on an involuntary 72-hour psychiatric hold. Now, it's so important to understand this. It's not a punishment. It's a tool for emergency assessment and care. And this is not something that can be used lightly. The criteria are incredibly specific and very, very serious. To even initiate a 5150 hold, one of three conditions absolutely must be met. The person is an immediate danger to themselves, an immediate danger to other people, or they are what's called gravely disabled, which means they literally cannot provide for their own basic needs like food, clothing, or shelter. We are talking about a moment of acute crisis. Okay, so you have this very serious, very specific legal tool for mental health emergencies in California. The question is, how did that jump from a dusty legal textbook into packed rock and roll arenas around the world? Well, this is how. In 1986, Van Halen released their album 5150, and this was a massive moment. It was their first with a new singer, Sammy Hagar, and they named both the album and Eddie Van Halen's home studio after the police code. The album was an absolute monster. It hit #1, it sold millions and millions of copies, and you just couldn't escape it on the radio. And just like that, the job was done. This single, multi-platinum album built a bridge from the California legislature straight to the entire world. Millions of people who had never heard of the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act now had the number 5150 stuck in their heads, and they were associating it not with crisis care, but with pure, loud, rock and roll energy. And this is where things start to get a little complicated, because once a term like this escapes into the public consciousness, it rarely stays the same. It starts to evolve, it starts to change, taking on new meanings and spreading in ways that no one could have ever predicted. This basically created a split personality for the term. On one side, you have the original legal meaning, a serious, temporary measure for someone in a deep crisis. And on the other, you've got its new life as slang, a casual, often joking, catch-all term for just acting crazy. The precision of the law was completely lost in translation. And that slang usage? Oh, it's still going strong today. It didn't stop with Van Halen. It's been referenced in the lyrics of so many modern artists, especially in hip-hop, cementing its place in the modern lexicon, a world away from its original legal context. But here's where we need to bring it back to the present. Because behind the rock albums and all the slang, Section 515 is not a piece of history. It is a very active and very real part of our mental health system today. Over 200,000. Let that number sink in. That's not just a statistic. That's roughly how many times this legal code is used in California every single year. Every single one of those instances represents a human being in a moment of profound crisis. And the use of 5150 holds isn't static. In fact, it's growing. We saw a really significant increase during the COVID-19 pandemic, which just highlights its continued and even expanding relevance in our current mental health landscape. And its use today isn't without controversy. There are critical, ongoing debates about how it's being applied. Who should be responding to these crises? Should it be police or dedicated mental health teams? Are there racial biases in who gets placed on a hold? And maybe most critically, what happens to people after those 72 hours are up? These are serious, tough questions our society is grappling with right now.
So, we've traced the incredible journey of this number, from a legal clause to a cultural staple. But this all raises the most important question of all. Why does this evolution from code to slang actually matter?
Well, for many mental health professionals, the casual use of 550/50 makes a mockery of mental health. They see it as taking a tool designed for the most vulnerable moments in a person's life and turning it into a joke, which completely trivializes the very real pain and crisis the code was created to address. From their perspective, the bottom line is simple. It's not a joke. When a 1550 hold is initiated, it is one of the most serious moments in an individual's life. It is an intervention of last resort. It's not a punchline or a cool album title. It's meant to be a lifeline. And that leaves us with this final thought. A simple number traveled from a law book to a rock album and right into our everyday slang. Its story is just a powerful reminder of how the meaning of something so serious can be completely transformed by culture. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does the language we all choose, sometimes even casually, end up shaping our collective understanding of mental health?